If you're playing as Mexico in Hearts of Iron 4, you're probably going the communist route so you can get several achievements at once. And with Trotsky in power, Stalin will attempt to assassinate him. So you get several hours in, and all of a sudden you see this event pop up, and you don't think too much of it because you don't know. But if you keep playing, eventually Stalin will succeed. And this is a real bummer because it doesn't happen until 1941, 1942, and by that point you've played for quite a few hours, and you're starting to think that the achievement to occupy part of the Soviet Union would be coming shortly, and was almost a sure thing. So, anyways, let's take a deep dive into why this happens. If you go for this achievement without La Resistance enabled, you don't have to worry about Stalin assassinating Trotsky, but I play with all the downloadable content enabled, so we're going to talk about this for a bit. So I've switched over to the Soviet Union. I want to look at the focus tree and the intelligence agency over here from the Soviet perspective. So looking at the focus tree, if you take the center, the Stalin route, you get down here towards the bottom and you can see the focus behead the snake. And if you look at it, the tooltip, it says unlocks operations to assassinate Trotsky, and also adds an operative and an operative slot. Let's look at the intelligence agency. I've had a spy network set up in Mexico for a bit in order to see what the different missions are, and subtle assassination and raid Trotsky's villa. These two mission options were not available until I completed the national focus behead the snake. Let's look at those again real quick. The requirements are not very difficult for these. Subtle assassination only requires a 25% network, and raid Trotsky's villa is only 50%. And if we click prepare on either of them and look at the requirements, one's only time and the other one's shorter with not very much of a equipment cost. So that's why the Soviet Union, or Stalin, always ends up assassinating Trotsky if you do not take the proper precautions. Alright, so I'm back as Mexico. The current year is 1942 again. I'm going to talk about what I do at the beginning of the game, but I wanted to do it later on so that I have everything unlocked and can just go through it step by step without having to pause and play for quite a while. So I leave La Resistance on to take advantage of it, even though it causes Trotsky to be, or have the possibility of being assassinated. At the beginning of the game, I will make my intelligence agency, and once my first operative has been recruited, I will take that operative and I will get them started making an intelligence network in the United States. And the reason I do that is if we go here and look at the focus tree for the US, this national focus, Arsenal of Democracy, gives the US 6 military factories, and they usually complete it before you go to war with them. And if they do that, it makes the war much more difficult, and you will start out well, but eventually they will outlast you and push you back as you run out of manpower. As long as they don't have an arsenal of democracy, they usually don't have enough weapons to defeat you. So my first operative goes in to start creating an intelligence network, and then the second one I get by getting the elusive gentleman, but I don't pick him right away. First, I change my conscription laws to limited conscription with the first 150 political power. That gives me almost enough army, infantry, cavalry, in order to Zerg rush the United States. With the second 150 political power, I choose the elusive gentleman for the second operative, and I take that second operative and I tell them to boost ideology. By this point, you should have a good established network in the US, so when you change the ideology at the beginning of the game, you're non-aligned instead of communist, and then you will start changing that. And if we look at the United States again, you can see non-aligns at 12%. That's from earlier in the game when I did this. The United States starts at 99% support for the Democratic Party. But if you build a network, put in a second operative to change ideology, and just let it sit, they will slowly switch over to the point where they can't become the arsenal of democracy. Once they get below 95%, if you're watching it, you can go to your intelligence agency and prepare collaboration governments. And this is to help push down the surrender limit for the United States. If we look at the requirements for it, you see that you need support equipment. That is difficult as Mexico, since you have to research support equipment before you can make it. If you don't want to take the time to research it and assign a factory to support equipment, if you look on the international market, once you get to 1937, there should be a few countries willing to sell you support equipment. So between that and using Operation Just Cause to get the United States to declare war on Mexico, the surrender threshold for the United States should be achievable by doing the cavalry Zerg rush. One other thing to note, though, is the timing of all this. Looking at Mexico right now, you can see I'm communist and I don't have Trotsky on here. It's because I'm so far in, and I was using this as the example of where he gets assassinated. On the last one, or the last section of the video playing, is the Soviet Union when I rushed down to get the missions to assassinate Trotsky. It was the end of 37 when I got those. The computer probably won't rush that, but even so, you're going to want to start thinking about that in 1938 and get your passive defense in place. You're going to want passive defense, all 4 upgrades for it to increase the counterintelligence, and then you're going to want to take 3 of your operatives and assign them to counterintelligence on Mexico, and you can see you get diminishing returns. The first one gets 1.25, next one half, and the third one a quarter. But all of this adds up to make Soviet Union unable to establish a good network in Mexico, and you also capture a lot of their agents. However, if you get this done after Stalin has already started the missions to assassinate Trotsky, you're still going to end up with Trotsky being assassinated. Therefore, you really want to get 3 agents on counterintelligence and the 4 passive defense upgrades by 39, definitely by 40. I don't have an exact time frame, but the earlier the better. The third operative I got was from having 5 branch upgrades. So if you're going to set passive defense to level 4, you might as well grab one of these top intelligence ones too, so you have your 5 upgrades, and then that'll give you your third agent. Once all that's in place, if it's in place early enough, you shouldn't have to worry about Stalin assassinating Trotsky.